Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio. So today, we're going to be having a lovely little look at a lovely little Tag Team GX. Yeah, all these Tag Team GXs are good. I brought you videos about winning deck lists of all of the Tag Team GXs over in Japan, except for the ones in Night Unison. But yesterday I showed you a video about how Sylveon and Gardevoir Tag Team GX is crushing over in Japan, and now I am going to show you a deck list of Zoroark and Greninja, which has gone and won over in Japan, proving that all of them are good. Seriously, every one of these Tag Team GXs has found itself winning a tournament in Japan within a few weeks of being released. They're all nuts good. So Greninja and Zoroark then. So what we have here is a first attack that for one darkness, one colourless energy, does 30 damage plus 30 more for each darkness energy attached to all of your Pokemon in play. So you pile a whole bunch of energy on and you do 30 damage plus 30 for each energy. That's going to add up fairly quickly if you can get the energy in play. The GX attack here, which is extremely important. 2 energy, although if you add a third, that's when it gets really good. But 2 energy, put up to 2 Darkness Pokemon GX or EX from your discard pile onto your bench. Meh, fine. If this Pokemon has at least 1 extra energy, so 3 in total, you may put 2 energy from the discard pile onto each of those Pokemon. So now you're bringing 2 Pokemon GX back with 2 energy on each. That's 4 energy, that's 120 damage. That's a lot. But as I mentioned in my Greninja and Zoroark deck, the Pokemon we choose to bring back here is Incineroar GX. You see, Incineroar GX has a redonkulous ability that allows you once during your turn to put 3 damage counters on this Pokemon and then search your deck for 3 darkness energy and attach them to this Pokemon. So now all of a sudden you've actually got 5 energy for each of the 2 Incineroar. That's 10 energy, that's 300 damage. So if you're going down the Greninja and Zoroark route, what you really want here is use the GX attack, bring back 2 Incineroar, use their abilities, and then you can basically one-hit KO everything. But Incineroar is actually a decent attacker in its own right, and given that Greninja and Zoroark gives up 3 prizes and Incineroar only gives up 2, which is a weird thing to say, only gives up 2, then actually here, you've got a decent attack. 130 for 3 energy, discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you're against something like a Zoroark deck that's super relying on their double colourless energy, you can make a bit of hay here, getting rid of their double colourless. But there's also a whole bunch of Pokemon out there that have 130 HP. Think the non-GX Buzzwole. Think White Kyurem. Don't think Granbull. Granbull has a resistance to darkness, so even though it's got 130 HP, that's not going to work. So it's a good attacker in its own right, but it's also great for using Greninja and Zoroark. And they are essentially your 2 options here. Either you attack with Greninja and Zoroark doing huge amounts of damage, or you take a slightly softly approach and attack with Incineroar. I mean, technically Incineroar does have a GX attack, 10 damage plus 50 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon, but the chances of you using this are slim because you need to really be using Greninja and Zoroark's GX attack. But what's really cool here, this deck does actually play 4 Litten. That's right. This deck plays 4 Litten, and while we're here, I should mention that it actually plays 4 Rare Candy. So as much as you can here, use the GX attack to go and get yourself some Incineroar just to try and beef up Greninja and Zoroark's attack. Make no mistake about it, this is an Incineroar deck, which makes me very happy because by now you should all know my thoughts on Incineroar. I love him. And let's not forget, we're playing free Incineroar here. So you can evolve one up manually while getting 2 out of the discard from Greninja and Zoroark. Or you can start with them, and when 1 or 2 get KO'd, you can bring in Greninja and Zoroark. You can use Greninja and Zoroark as just a late game sweeper while taking most of the game with Incineroar. And it really depends on what you're playing against. If you're playing against a big Tag Team GX deck, Incineroar's going to be 2-hit KOing and it can get 1-hit KO. And it's a little bit awkward. But if you're against a non-GX deck, there's nothing to stop you here just going with Incineroar. Because I'm going to spoil one of the trainer cards we're playing in this deck here. We're playing Max Potion. So okay, you've got to take Incineroar down to 220 HP in order to use the ability. But if your opponent doesn't get a 1-hit KO, you can Max Potion. And the great thing about Incineroar is it gets itself going. So you attack, don't get KO'd, Max Potion, and then you can just use the ability to get the energy out. Now, in terms of other Pokemon here, we're playing a couple Tapu Lele. We get our supporters to help get set up. Really, this deck is all about Incineroar and Greninja and Zoroark. Now, in terms of the trainer line here, we do see a few slightly weirder choices. I've already mentioned Max Potion, but we're playing 3 copies of Energy Switch here. Why? Because you need 2 energy on Greninja and Zoroark to attack. And you need a 3rd energy to use a GX attack. Well, Incineroar accelerates energy to itself, but only to itself. So what you do here is you get an Incineroar out nice and early, and then energy switch over. So you can actually go aggro Greninja and Zoroark, while getting 1 Incineroar out in the early game, using it to accelerate energy, and then just energy switching it over. That is an option that you have. And then we have a couple of darkness-specific cards. We do see a copy of Altar of the Moon here, which will reduce your retreat cost by 2 if you've got any psychic or darkness energy attached. So Greninja and Zoroark Tag Team GX has a retreat cost of 2. It's free if they've got any energy. Incineroar has a retreat cost of 3, so you can reduce it down to 1 by playing the stadium. But there is another stadium here, and this stadium, if you're playing a darkness deck, you are definitely playing this. It is Black Market Prism Star, and essentially it says that darkness Pokemon with any darkness energy attached give up 1 fewer prize. So you only give up 1 prize with an Incineroar, 2 prizes with a Greninja and Zoroark. That, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty gosh darn sweet. But we also see a copy of Nanu here. And we've looked at a whole bunch of Japanese decks lately, and we haven't seen Nanu in any of them. What does Nanu do? Well, it allows you to switch a basic darkness Pokemon from your discard pile with any of your Pokemon in play. It keeps any cards attached to it, damage counter, special conditions, etc. Well, this is wonderful here, because what we have is Incineroar, who attaches energy to himself with the ability, and then Greninja and Zoroark, that is a Tag Team GX, which means it's a basic. Sure, you've got to keep the free damage counters on, but you also get to keep the free energy, which, yes, is enough to use a GX attack fully. So if you can get a turn 2 Incineroar here and then play Nanu, you've got your Greninja and Zoroark up and rolling. It really is a great little card. You're not going to use it every game. It's not always going to work. But when it does, it is going to be beautiful. Now, in terms of other trainers here, we see 4 copies of Lily. Lily is great in this deck because it's pure draw, as opposed to something like Cynthia, which shuffles your hand in and then you draw, because you need to draw cards here, because you need the stage 2 and the rare candy in hand. We play 4 rare candy, obviously. So if you've got 1 in hand, playing a Cynthia can be annoying. What you really want to do is draw to try and get the other one. We do play 2 copies of Cynthia here, because it's still a great card, but Lily is our preferred option. 3 copies of Guzma to take Pokemon off the bench and KO them. The more KOs you can get of Incineroar, the better, but it does also act as a rather nice switching card, though Altar of the Moon means that's slightly less important. 2 copies of Bill's Analysis, which we are seeing crop up in a whole bunch of Japanese decks. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, find 2 trainer cards and put them into your hand. Which means you can search for stuff like Max Potion or Rare Candy, which could be game-changing if found at the right time. We see 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Nest Ball. This is just to get yourself set up. Nest Ball will get your Litten and your Greninja and Zoroark. Ultra Ball will get any of them, but you can get Tapu Lele and still use the ability, and you can get your Incineroar with them, so they're fairly important. We see a couple copies of Choice Band here, because doing extra damage is always good. It means that Incineroar can hit up to 160, which honestly, unless you're against Marshadow, is not going to be too relevant. Although Marshadow is getting better and better nowadays, so it's not completely irrelevant. But it means you can do more damage with your Greninja and Zoroark, more damage with your Incineroar. It's pretty nice. We see a single copy of Switch just to get your Pokemon out the active. Like I say, we got 3 Guzma and an Ultra of the Moon, but having a Switch is still pretty nice. And then we see 1 copy of Energy Recycler. Remember that Incineroar's ability here activates from the deck. That's very important, because it means if you don't have enough energy in your deck, you cannot search them and get them out using Incineroar. Energy Recycler puts them back into your deck. That works nicely. This means that we've now looked at all 6 Tag Team GXs seeing success, and it means we finally looked at a winning Incineroar list, and that makes me very happy because I love me some Incineroar. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time to tell me what you love. I would very much like to know what you think about this deck, whether you think it's legit or whether you think it's a little bit overblown. Do let me know in the comment section, but please do remember the most important rule as always. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays. We have been doing some exclusive reveals of Transformers TCG cards lately, and I am beyond delighted to have the opportunity to do that. So please go check them out. But by far the most important thing as always is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching PTCG Radio.